Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, there's a lot to talk about regarding the Dodgers pitching staff. We have questions from insiders about Bobby Miller, Walker Buehler, and what the bullpen will look like. We're going to dig into all of those things today. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. My name is Jeff Snyder. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And with that said, again, want to welcome you to the show. Appreciate you being here. Shout out to our everydayers. Also want to shout out our Locked On Dodgers insiders, which you can become. There's a message scrolling across the bottom right now if you're watching on YouTube, but just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, and you can become an insider. You can text back and forth with us. And a lot of this episode comes from our insiders. We got questions from them via text message through that system, and we're going to dig into those. Although our first question didn't come from an insider, it came from an everydayer named Steve, who is, they say you're not supposed to have favorite everydayers, but they also say you're not supposed to have favorite kids, and we all do. But if you're listening, Logan, it's you. Or Ryan, if you're listening, don't listen to Logan, it's you. And Lindsay, if you're listening, it's you. You have to tell them all that they're your favorite. So same with insiders. So yeah, you're all my favorite insider. But Steve took me to 2 Dodger playoff games last year, so he's a little bit ahead of you. Actually, his son Levi is probably ahead of him. Levi's an everydayer too at 10 years old, so that's pretty awesome. But anyway, Steve asked me a question about Walker Buehler that I thought, let's dig into that on the podcast. And it was pretty simple. He said, how good do you expect Walker Buehler to be? Does he have it in him to be all-star level? And I thought Buehler is a guy who we've mentioned a lot this offseason, but we haven't really dug into what we're expecting from him. And they did confirm at FanFest or Dodger Fest, whatever you want to call it, last weekend, that it's very likely that Buehler won't be on the Dodgers roster to start the season. Partly just making sure he's fully recovered from that second Tommy John surgery. And I think also some of it is just, I don't want to say load management. I know that nobody likes that term because of the NBA these days, but managing his innings. Buehler coming back from a second Tommy John surgery is going to be on some sort of an innings limit. Probably not super drastic, but I think they are going to be mindful of the innings that he's throwing, the pitches that he's throwing, and I think they would rather have those pitches, at least some of them, be thrown in October than have him pitching in April and then run out of gas by the time the playoffs come around. So, we don't know if that means he'll take a couple weeks at the start of the season or a month or whatever. They did say he's not a candidate for the 60-day injured list, so it's not going to be the first 2 months of the season. We expect him back at least by sometime in May, but that's the question. So we know he won't start the season on the roster. And I texted Steve back and when Steve asked, can Buehler be all-star level again? I think quality-wise, he absolutely can. I don't think he will be an all-star this year simply because he'll be starting the season late. And so the body of work won't be there yet as they're naming the all-star team. Pitchers don't even have just the popularity vote of, oh, yeah, people vote for him even though he's hurt. Pitchers are basically only on the team based on merit. And he probably won't have enough innings pitched by the all-star break to merit making the all-star team. But I do expect him to be good because when he's been healthy, he's been very good. And, we don't know exactly when his arm started hurting last year. He was pretty lousy I mean, not lousy, but he struggled quite a bit, especially by his standards in 2022 when he did pitch before he went down with injury. He started the season pretty okay, but then his last, you remember he even had he had a complete game shutout against the D-backs early in that season. After 6 starts, his ERA was 196, but then he made 6 more starts and they didn't go well. So 196 through the first 6 starts, and the next 6 starts, his ERA was 667, 21 earned runs, and 28 and a third innings pitched. Struggled quite a bit, only threw 28 and a third innings in those 6 starts. So that's less than 5 innings a game. And we don't know exactly when he got hurt, what the extent of that injury was. So we don't know how much of those struggles were related to the injury. But it's safe to say that, it probably was affecting him some, even if he didn't realize it. A lot of times weakness in the arm will come before something tears. And so as far as we know, when Walker Buehler's been healthy in his career, he's been very good. And the projections for him kind of bear that out. Like we talked about yesterday, projections are conservative, but Baseball Reference projects him to have a 3.68 ERA this year. They only project him for 66 innings pitched, which I think is way low. And, all these projections have different formulas, but the fact that he's only thrown 65 innings combined in the last 2 seasons, maybe that's playing a big part in that. But I do think he'll throw well over the 66 inning mark. The other projections that you can see on Fangraphs, Zips and Steamer, those ones have him a much more reasonable, 130 to 155 innings pitched. I would guess Buehler ends up right around 150 innings pitched this year. That's kind of my guess. And what they have him for is Zips has him for a 3.56 ERA, Steamer a 4.36 ERA. And somewhere in that ballpark, I think is perfectly reasonable. And like I said, I do think those are conservative. I think if Walker Buehler is fully healthy, I would be surprised. I would think the 3.56 projection is the high end of what I expect from him. I expect an ERA in the low-ish 3s, somewhere between 3.10 and 3.30. Somewhere in that ballpark is what I would expect from Buehler this year. And that would be very, very useful. This Dodgers offense is going to score runs. If Buehler can get, average about 6 innings a start and, giving up 3-ish runs per game in those 6 innings, and that would be a 4.5 ERA, giving up 3 runs. So, but allowing 2 to 3 runs in those 6 innings, he's going to dominate, and the Dodgers are going to win most of those starts. Buehler is going into his last season before free agency, so there is some of that incentive for him. He's going to turn 30 midseason. So there's not that a pitcher like that needs incentive to pitch well, but I do think just in general, pitchers who are going into any baseball player going into free agency wants to maximize that free agent contract. And so he has the incentive to pitch well. And really, I hope the Dodgers can manage the innings such that he gets things worked out. There will probably be kinks early in the season and then gets that worked out. So by the time October rolls around, he is dominant playoff ace Walker Buehler that we've seen in the past. There will be hiccups. Hopefully none of those hiccups involve injury. But he will, you can't expect him to dominate immediately. But you look at his rookie season, he threw 137 innings and had a 2.62 ERA. Now, the year before, when he did pitch 8 games in relief for the Dodgers, he was pretty bad, 7.71 ERA. Although some of that, he did have one blow up against the Rockies. So I think half of that ERA came in that game. But his first full season in the big leagues, he was great. And I think we can expect something along those lines. He's still Walker Buehler. He's got that competitor. He's got the arm. He's got the stuff. And he's got a great team around him. So, yeah, Steve and all of you, I expect Walker Buehler to be ace-like. Maybe not immediately this year, but at some point this season, he will refine that ace mojo and be pretty darn awesome. So thanks, Steve, for the question. Thanks for everything, Steve. You're awesome. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to answer a similar question about Bobby Miller. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to sporting events, concerts, and comedy shows can be stressful. Hidden fees, you can't tell if the seats are any good, and always the nagging worry that you're not getting the best deal. Well, guess what? Buying tickets online doesn't have to be stressful, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I bought tickets to see my favorite comedian, Nate Bargatze, when he came to Salt Lake a few months ago, and I put Game Time to the test. I checked every ticket site there is, and Game Time really was the lowest price by far. And if you ever find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you're heading to the Vegas for the football game this weekend, use promo code VEGAS100 and get $100 off the purchase of a ticket to the big game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hey, I'm back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Want to remind you, the Locked On Podcast Network has two 24/7 streaming channels, Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, giving you all the breakdown on all the sports going on, whether it's across the country or specific to Los Angeles. Those two channels will give you everything you need. So check those out 24/7 on YouTube. And remember, you can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a text message-based system. We text you our thoughts throughout the day on news, rumors, etc. And you can text back and forth with us. We can have one-on-one conversations. It's a lot of fun. Vince and I are both on there. Vince just got on recently, and so it has been mostly me interacting with the insiders, but Vince is on board now too. And so check that out by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, just a few bucks a month, and there is a free 14-day trial. And with that said, let's jump back into our episode. Pitchers and catchers report today. It's a very big day on our baseball calendar. It's the day that winter becomes spring, and maybe not literally for some of us. It snowed about 4 inches here at my house today. But it's spring in Dodgerland, and spring training starts. And one of the people we are most excited for as far as returning players goes is Bobby Miller. Obviously, there's been a lot of excitement all offseason about some of the recent acquisitions. And, you know, obviously Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto are the two biggest. Tyler Glasnow, we're all excited to see. Bobby Miller, though, he is, I believe he's the future ace of the Dodgers. And last year, he pitched 124 innings, you know, had a pretty full rookie season, made 22 starts, you know, a really good, if I remember right, that's about how much Clayton Kershaw pitched in his first season. I feel like 22 starts. I think I remember that lining up simply because, yep, there it is. Oh no, 22 games pitched, only 21 starts and 107 innings pitched, whereas Bobby Miller threw 124. So a little bit higher workload than Kershaw had in his first season. And, you know, pitched better than Kershaw did in his first season. Kershaw's first season, he had a 4.26 ERA. Bobby Miller, 3.76 and a 3.51 FIP. So it was, you know, basically it was all legit. And when you look at the projections for Miller, people are, I don't know if excited. You know, again, I remind you, projections are conservative, but Baseball Reference has him throwing 122 innings, so about the same as last year, with a 3.98 ERA. And that is basically, you know, almost the same numbers that he had last year. We would take that. I think he's going to be better than that. If you look at some of the other projections, Zips has him a 3.74 ERA and 137 innings. Steamer has him 4.02 ERA and 151 innings. Again, like, I expect Miller to take a step forward. And after last year, like I said, he had a 3.76 ERA. I expect that ERA to drop a little bit, you know, maybe not into the twos, but again, you know, around that 3.25, 3.3 mark, I think is perfectly reasonable for Bobby Miller. He's got such good stuff, and he's going to continue to refine that. We saw some changes in him late in the season last year as his attitude, his demeanor with runners on base. And you could see that his, like say his last, he had some clunkers. You remember there was the game against the Giants when he allowed 7 runs. His next start against the Astros, he allowed 6 runs. And I mean, those 2 games were a big part of it. But in his last 4 starts last year, he had an ERA of 2.78. And overall, a 3.76 ERA as a rookie, even with those clunkers. Like, he had a lot of games where he allowed 1 or 0 runs. Looks like 10 of his 22 starts, he allowed 1 or fewer earned runs, 2 more with 2 runs allowed, and 4 more with 3 runs allowed. So what's that? 16 of his starts, 3 runs or less. And, that we'll take that every day from Bobby Miller. But like I was saying, late in the season, he started to figure out some things, started to get a little bit more of that bulldog mentality. And he's a guy, we've joked that, he could be nicknamed Bulldog like Orel Hershiser was, except it wouldn't be a sarcastic nickname with Bobby Miller like it was originally for Orel Hershiser. Tommy Lasorda named Orel Hershiser Bulldog as kind of an aspirational nickname. Like, I want you to be a Bulldog. Well, Bobby Miller, he's got that attitude when he's out there on the mound. And I think he'll only get better with another year of being on the bench next to Clayton Kershaw, next to Tyler Glasnow, next to Walker Buehler, next to Shohei Ohtani even. Ohtani, even though he's not pitching this year, he's still a very good pitcher. And, there's so much that these guys can learn, these young guys. So guys like Miller and Emmett Sheehan and Gavin Stone and all of the even younger guys, I think by younger, I guess I mean further back in the minors. None of them are super young, these prospects, as we've talked about. But there's a lot for Bobby Miller to learn, and he seems to be really, really interested in learning it. And so Bobby Miller is one of the people I'm most excited to watch this year, simply because he is going to there will be learning curves, there will be hiccups and stuff again. But I think that overall we're going to see a lot of dominant performances from Bobby Miller. I think we're going to see some 7 innings, no runs kind of games. And I think he will limit the clunkers. I think he has developed some of that ability to get himself out of trouble with his stuff. Obviously, his strikeout rate last year, for as hard as he throws, he didn't even average a strikeout an inning. He had a 8.6 strikeouts per 9. His strikeout percentage was only 23.6, so just a little bit above league average. So getting that strikeout percentage up a little bit, the walk percentage down a little bit, and he's going to be really, really good. And I'm excited to see it. I do think this is the year he takes a big step forward. Again, he's probably not an all-star this year, but I think this is the year in the future we'll look back and say, oh, that was the year that Bobby Miller kind of showed what he was made of and showed why he is the future ace of the Dodgers. I actually just realized I forgot to read the specific question from our insider that led me to this. Mark from Westwood, he's an everydayer and he's an insider through subtext. And he says, I'm getting really excited about Bobby Miller this year. Should I curb my enthusiasm or do you share my excitement? And so, yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to protect your heart, curbing your enthusiasm is never a bad idea. But I think Bobby Miller is a guy that it's fun to be excited about. And I think there's a lot to be excited about. And I think you are justified in being very excited about Bobby Miller between the number of pitches he has and the quality of pitches. You remember as a prospect, Bobby Miller throws 100 miles an hour. And I think it was Baseball Prospectus that said when they were ranking him as a prospect a year and a half ago, that his fastball might be his 4th best pitch. And, that might've been hyperbole, but we've seen those other pitches and there's a lot of quality there. And so figuring out sequencing, figuring out how to throw those pitches to major league hitters, that's part of the progression. And there are things, we've talked about this before, there are things about being a major league pitcher that the only way you can really learn them is by being a major league pitcher. And so that's something that Bobby Miller is going to do this year. There will be hiccups and bumps and bruises along the way. But for the most part, I think we're going to see big step forward for Bobby Miller, and I'm excited to see it. So I'm going to come back in a minute and I'm going to talk about the Dodgers bullpen. We've talked about a couple starting pitchers. Bullpen is an interesting question that we're going to dig into. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Maybe you want to watch some commercials too. Maybe check out Taylor Swift in the stands. A lot of stuff to love about the Super Bowl, but FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, the final score, who will win MVP. So many things you can bet on, and a lot of dumb things too. If you like betting on dumb things, FanDuel's got that too. Crazy little things. Whatever it is, go check it out. New customers join today, and you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, I'm back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks to our insiders. Become an insider by watching and listening every weekday morning. No, become an everydayer by watching and listening every weekday morning. Become an insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And if you're looking for more Locked On content and maybe 24/7 on YouTube, you've got Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube that give you all the day's breakdown on sports across the country or across Los Angeles anytime you need it. So check out those two channels. And let's dive back in for our last segment. This also comes from a question from an insider. This one comes from Seth, one of our insiders. I think we have two insiders named Seth. It's not the one from Alabama. This is the other Seth. And he just says simply, what would our bullpen look like if the season started tomorrow? That's an excellent question. And it's not an easy one to answer. There are people who we know will be in the Dodgers bullpen, assuming no injuries in spring training. We can count on, in no particular order, Brusdar Graterol, Joe Kelly, Evan Phillips, Ryan Brazier. Those four for sure. Alex Vesia seems very likely since he is the only lefty left. So that's 5. And part of the tricky part here is we don't even necessarily know how many relievers they'll have. You can only have up to 13 pitchers on your pitching staff. And we don't know if they're going to have 5 or 6 starting pitchers. I think at times they will use a 6-man rotation this year, but I don't know if that'll be right to start the season with Buehler being slow played, all those things. It's probably 8 relievers to start the season. And when I say start the season, I'm not talking about Korea. Korea, it'll be all sorts of crazy because they only need 2 starting pitchers, which means even 3 more potential bullpen spots or bench spots. So I think we might see 14 pitchers. No, not 14 pitchers. I think 12 pitchers and 14 position players, maybe even 11 pitchers, which would still be 9 relievers since you only need 2 starters. So 11 pitchers and 15 position players for the 2 games in Korea. But when we talk about once the season actually starts here in the United States, I would expect 13 pitchers and 8 of them to be relievers at the start. So we've listed 5 other guys for candidates for those last 3 spots. A lot of it comes down to health because you've got Blake Trinan. If he's healthy, he's going to be on the roster. Ricky Vanasco is probably going to be on the roster. He pitched really, really well in AAA last year. The Dodgers signed him to a major league deal. So probably on the big league roster, Ricky Vanasco. And then who was the other one that I was just looking at? Who, if he's healthy, now it just JP Fireeisen is another guy who the Dodgers traded for him. He has still never thrown a pitch for the Dodgers. He was injured all last year, but I think he is a guy who, when he's healthy, he's going to be going to get a lot of shots in the Dodgers Major League bullpen because he has been a very successful Major League relief pitcher already in his career. He's not a minor league guy. It's just a matter of if he's healthy. So if all the guys are healthy, well, there's your 8. But then you've got Daniel Hudson, who's coming into camp on a minor league deal. If he's healthy, he could get added to the 40-man roster and be one of those 8 relievers. Matt Gage, who they just traded Caleb Ferguson for, he's a potential option in the bullpen. Obviously, then you've also got Michael Grove. You've got Ryan Yarbrough, guys who are kind of technically starting pitchers, but more likely to pitch out of the bullpen this year, probably. I don't think either of those guys is likely to be, especially if they're only doing 5 pitchers. Like, if we're looking at the 5 starting pitchers to start the season, you've got Glasnow, you've got Miller, you've got Buehler, you've got Paxton probably, and you've got Yamamoto. And so those 5 guys, Emmett Sheehan would be that 6th guy if Paxton's not healthy. So Michael Grove doesn't seem to have a spot unless there's a couple injuries as a starter. So it's like, do you use him in one of those bullpen spots? Yarbrough, I'm baffled about what they're going to do with Ryan Yarbrough. He doesn't strike me as a guy who has much of a fit, although early in the season with so many workload things and potential injury things, they might want to have Yarbrough be in the bullpen as a long reliever, kind of a piggyback starter type, and maybe Michael Grove too, in that kind of role of, okay, Tyler Glasnow, let's start it slow. You're only going 4 innings this start, and then Yarbrough is going to go 3 or 4, or whether it's Yamamoto, just because of the different workload for the United, come over to the United States. Obviously, James Paxton, if he's healthy, but maybe they want to limit him. They could go with, a piggyback start there with Michael Grove. There's options there, but all those piggyback starters take bullpen spots. And so one of the reasons that they traded for Matt Gage was because he has an option available and Caleb Ferguson didn't. So they can keep Gage in the minors or even pull him up and down, back and forth. A lot of these guys, some of these guys don't. That's why I said if Blake Treinen's healthy, he's going to be in the bullpen. Alex Vesia, kind of the same thing. Evan Phillips isn't going anywhere. Bruce Gratterall's not going anywhere. Joe Kelly not going anywhere. Ryan Brazier obviously not going anywhere. So the bullpen has potential to be a really, really strong part of this team. But there's a lot of question marks about the bullpen. I'm excited about the answers to a lot of those questions, but I'm still interested to see what those answers are and when. Joe Kelly is maybe the most volatile of those relievers, not knowing what to expect from him. But he's got great stuff. Bruce Gratterall really, really seemed to find things last year. There's just so much to be excited about with this bullpen and with the starting pitchers, like we talked about the first 2 segments. So pitching is going. There's a reason that the Dodgers are projected to allow the 5th fewest runs in baseball, because this pitching staff is going to be really, really good. And the bullpen will be a big part of that. And I think one of their main goals is going to be last year that when the bullpen struggled, it was because the starters weren't going deep enough in games. So the bullpen was overworked. And so I think that's why a guy like Ryan Yarbrough still exists on the Dodgers roster, because if the Dodgers don't want their good relievers to get overworked. And so Yarbrough and Grove could fill that long relief role if necessary to be a bridge to actual late inning relievers rather than getting our good relievers overworked early in the season and leading to issues. So that's probably the bullpen is probably the biggest question mark on the team as far as who will actually be on the roster, because there's so many health questions with these guys coming back from injury. There's quality questions. There's so many questions. And like I said, the answers could be pretty exciting. But one way or another, we're going to find out pretty soon. We're going to start finding out, pitchers and catchers report today. There's not any big news coming up today on Thursday, other than they will make the Brazier and Kershaw signings official, I assume. For Brazier, they'll have to put somebody on the 60-day injured list. And then they could, and what they could do is just sign Kershaw first, put somebody on the 60-day injured list, either Gonsolin, May, or Frasso. Put somebody on the 60-day to open up a 40-man roster spot, sign Clayton Kershaw, and then immediately put Kershaw on the 60-day injured list to make room for Brazier. One way or another, two of those four guys, between Gonsolin, May, Frasso, and Kershaw, two of those guys will be on the 60-day injured list probably by the end of the day Thursday, definitely by the end of this weekend. And Ryan Brazier and Clayton Kershaw will both be officially part of the 2024 Dodgers roster starting soon. So it's an exciting time. Pitchers and catchers report is always an exciting time. We've started counting down the days since the Dodgers got eliminated in the playoffs last year. Hopefully we're going to get a longer postseason run this year, hopefully all the way to the end, and end with Dodgers World Series parade through the streets of Los Angeles. That's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, that's what I'm counting on, and I am very optimistic about it. So a lot of that has to do with the pitching. So it's been fun talking pitching with you guys today. That will do it for me for today. Thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Remember to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month, and there's a free 14-day trial. Great way to support us and get even more Locked On Dodgers content that only you get as an insider. And as you saw in this episode, get to ask us questions and have them answered on the show sometimes. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us anytime you want, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.